Hello there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan, and Andor is over. Forever, probably. And that's kind of sad. I knew this moment was coming, but now that it's here, I almost feel like Star Wars shouldn't continue after this show. Like, there's a part of me that thinks this is the high mark. Let's just preserve the show and let future generations enjoy it. Maybe they'll better understand what life was like during this window of time we exist in. And then there's the other side of me who's like, well, we need the entire galactic civil war the next 5 years or so done in the same way they did Andor. You know, story and character comes first, and fan servicing and special effects are kind of secondary things. That is how you create a story that is timeless, that will be relevant to multiple generations, because this is ultimately just a human story. It'd be really awesome to see the Galactic Civil War done in the way that Andor is done. You know, as the old characters from Andor fade a little into the background, we'll have to see what the war was like from the point of view of a new group of every man and every woman. What was the mid-rim offensive like for the transport pilots, for the rebel ground pounders? What was it like for the average Imperial troopers after Alderaan and then Yavin? What were they all thinking? Which type of people defected? Which type of people only hardened their resolve and support for the Empire? Either way, it's going to be tough to be a Star Wars fan. I mean, Andor has set such an unreasonably high standard for what Star Wars could be. I think they're going to struggle to recapture this moment, especially if Andor is not as commercially successful as it should be. I guess the one positive thing about the end of Andor is that it doesn't leave you feeling alone and empty. There's no absence when the show ends, and that's because in the last few episodes we begin to see more and more familiar sights that we first saw a decade ago in Rogue One. And so the end of Andor is almost like a return home in some ways. The rebel base in Yavin 4 feels more alive and real than ever before, a true haven against the Empire. Seeing Senator Palmao from Taris and Senator Jebel from Utir discussing things alongside Raddus, Mon Mothma, and Bail Organa makes me excited to rewatch Rogue One. Seeing Saw Gerrera's angry message to Mon Mothma just teases the beginning of her tenure as leader of the rebellion, a role that will continue to take more and more from her. We also have General Draven setting Andor on a meeting to find Tivik on the Ring of Kafrene, where Andor will have to make a very difficult choice. The first of many in his last year of life, and one of the first scenes we see in Rogue One. This is a different Andor from the one we started off with. Although Cassian's personality hasn't really changed much, his ideology, his purpose in life is clear now. He is fully committed to this rebellion, and in the last scene of the show, we see the true cost of it all. Cassian Andor has already lost so much. His actual parents to whether mining catastrophe befell Kenari. He's also lost his sister and also the entire tribe of children he grew up with. He's lost Clem, his adopted father, and later he lost Marva, his adopted mother. He also loses Brasso, his best friend, and God knows how many other neighbors and friends after the Ferrix massacre. And now he's even lost Luthen Rael, a mentor who has taught Andor more than anyone about how to survive this shadowy world of cloaks and daggers. In many ways, Cassian Andor's life is defined by loss. In the last 5 years, he's lost more than most people have gained in their entire lives. But to see Bix with his child at the very end, that brings the true cost home. After the first season, after narrowly escaping Ferrix with his friends, Cassian was very much in a different place from where he was in the beginning. Andor was now committed to the rebellion. Mostly because no matter which way he turned, the rebellion and the Force dragged him back in. But at this point, he actually wasn't truly committed yet. And one of the reasons why is because of his relationship with Bix, which he develops in between the first and second season. And it's clear from the dialogue early on in the second season that he is very worried about her. When she has an episode on Minarao, this is what B2 Emo says.
What happened?
She had another dream.
Go back to bed. She'll be fine.
Cassian will want to know.
She'll deal with that.
He'll be home to tomorrow.
Bix then almost gets raped by that Imperial officer, which I'm sure only adds to the trauma that she has. And so for most of the year that they're on Coruscant, Andor spends that time really worrying over Bix. It's like a new side to him that we've never really seen before.
What am I messing up?
You didn't kill that boy because we're at war. You killed him because you saw my face.
And it only gets worse as time progresses. You know, by the time the Gorman front is going to make its move, Cassian is just completely hesitant to do anything without her.
And Bix?
No, not this time. No. You have to go alone.
I have to think about that.
Things were getting pretty bad at this point. Bad enough for Luthen Rael to actually go in and check on Bix, something he rarely would do for his other operatives.
Tell me about the weapon.
This shows us just how important Cassian is to Luthen. I mean, Luthen even comes up with a solution for what he saw as their problem. Luthen gives Bix a sense of control and agency by setting up an operation where she gets to kill the ISB officer who tortured her and caused all this trauma in the first place. You see, Luthen can do nice things, but even when he tries to show his empathy and compassion, it usually ends up with a massive explosion and the murder of some Imperial personnel. But all of this worry between Cassian and Bix, all of this tension, it's not just caused by this trauma that Bix is suffering from that ISB torture session. It's not about the cramped quarters on Coruscant. You know, these are all just kind of side effects of the larger problem. That problem being that in a serious revolution or war, one has to commit themselves completely, because this is a contest of life or death. No one really half-asses it unless they want to end up dead. And this has been really one of the major themes in the second season. You can either choose love, family, a future, or you can throw yourself into a war, sacrifice the best years of your life, and maybe, just maybe, you get to be some kind of empty shell of yourself if you survive all those horrors, physically. The mental scars will probably never heal. This is why Cinta could never be with Vel. This is why Cyril could never be with Dedra. I mean, even Luthen Rael's relationship with Clea is never revealed to be a father-daughter one until the very end. And even then, what is the end result of that relationship? Clea has to pull the plug on her father. You know, when you're a young person, in your late teens or in your early 20s, if you're lucky enough, you'll have the chance to have an education. You'll be able to go out there and start to develop a career, a profession of some kind. And things look great. Things look bright. You see all the opportunities laid out before you. You have hope. You have optimism. But eventually, you're going to have to readjust kind of your goals. At one point, you're going to have to make a choice between pursuing your professional ambitions in life versus pursuing your personal relationships. When you get older, time simply just begins to run out. You find yourself being loaded down with more pointless tasks, bureaucracies that come with growth in this kind of system we live in. All that energy, all that exuberance, all that risk-taking behavior, it eventually mellows out and you become more rational. You take less risk. I could say that you're being wise, but you're also coming to terms with the fact that a lot of your very lofty goals will never happen. And that's kind of sad. The truth is, if you want to be the most successful individual in your field, if you want to be the most famous, rich, a political figure that creates real change in the world, you're going to have to sacrifice on the personal side of your life. You're going to have to ditch meetings with friends, skip dates and relationships. There are exceptions, of course, like truly talented individuals who can balance everything and somehow make it all easy, but most of us can't do this. I mean, even super intelligent, principled individuals like Mon Mothma cannot be both a great leader of the opposition and also a great mom. She can only be Mon. Remove this whole galactic struggle between the Empire and the Rebellion, and Perrin and Lyta have a point. Everyone else loves that Mon Mothma is doing all of this great work for the Rebellion, except for the people who need her the most. I understand where they're coming from. It is a bit selfish, but I understand them. You know, in previous jobs, I've had the luxury of meeting a lot of people who I guess we would view as being at the top of society. You know, elite individuals who are politicians, CEOs, athletes, people who make decisions that affect other people's lives. The thing is, when you meet people who are successful, who are at these highest levels of whatever profession, there is an intensity, a focus on structure and success that, in my own personal opinion, is kind of off-putting. I understand why people want to pursue these things, but it's a little bit unnatural. And that's because directors, politicians, CEOs, athletes, they are in the position that they are in because of what they prioritize in life. You know, these are not all bad people. Obviously, they're not all sociopaths. It actually takes a great amount of skill, courage, discipline to reach where these people have. And a lot of them have a really big impact on the world in a positive way. But what always suffers is the personal relationships. I mean, I see it all the time in New York City and in Manhattan. The children of the elite being taken care of maids who oftentimes become the primary caregiver. This is very common in all of the major cities in the world where the elite live. This isn't just something that happens to the elites too, right? This is something that happens to parents every day. Like, if you're a parent today in 2025, you're probably wondering yourself, why am I working an entire job just to pay for my kid's childcare? Shouldn't I just not work that job and take care of the kid myself? You know. And then as a child, I experienced this, but on the other side, as a child, it was quite common in the 80s and 90s for Chinese immigrants to send their kids back to China to be raised by their grandparents because of just how expensive childcare is. This is actually still very common in China. Like, they do this all the time still. And this was just a very pragmatic decision that a lot of Asians made. They just realized they couldn't devote themselves to a profession, to a job fully, while also having to take care of a child. Now, I do have to say, like, that whole experience with my grandparents wasn't necessarily a bad one. I mean, they kind of spoiled me. But yeah, the funny thing is, now that I'm grown up and I'm older, I've kind of gone in the complete opposite direction of my parents. I choose family first as much as I can. I put it before my career, before business, before money, all these other things. And one, it's because I have the luxury to do this. My parents probably weren't in the same situation financially as I was. They were, new immigrants. They had very little money. I benefited from having that stable home, having an education, having just like all of these opportunities that my parents never did. And I still choose to put it into family because I think there's really nothing more valuable than in your life than the personal relationships where you make with people. Like status, like money, items. When you have a little bit, when you have a little more, you start to notice there's not like a huge difference. There never really is, And the desire to have more, the desire to want to collect more, it never goes away. And the same thing goes with ambition for career, for building a business, for being the best YouTuber. It never ends as well. There's always going to be this hunger. It's really just a mindset. There's no end goal necessarily. And I think when you put yourself in that kind of competitive loop, especially when you're living in a place like this, New York City. I remember being 20 and in this place. It's kind of crazy. It's maddening. Everyone is kind of driven by this intense desire to succeed. And that will steer you away from other things. That will make it much harder for you to nurture the personal relationships that will, I think, become more important once you get wiser and older in life. And I'm not just talking about kids. I'm talking about like having good relations with your family, with your community, with your friends. And that's why, on Tuesdays when Andor comes out, instead of just preparing all day for the next episode, I usually just take the day off and I hang out with my daughter. I take her out to the city, we go to the museum, and if I were a rich man, if I had all my financial obligations taken care of, that's what I would do every day. That's all I would do. That's the most valuable thing in my life. The truth is, I am nothing like Cassian Andor, or any of these other characters or their modern contemporaries in real life. And you should really be thankful that you're not like Cassian Andor. I mean, Cassian Andor is someone you respect, someone that you're glad exists, someone that you maybe pray for, but you don't want to go through what he's gone through. Because the amount of death, destruction, and loss that Cassian Andor has to witness to get to where he is now is incredible. But such is the nature of the rebellion, right?
You think I'm crazy? Yes, I am. Revolution is not for the sane.
The term crazy is kind of loaded, as is the term sane. Especially when the guy saying it is Saw Gerrera right after huffing rhydonium fumes. We tend to associate, the word crazy with negative things, but really another alternative for crazy, another synonym could just be unorthodox or thinking outside the box. Whereas sane, it doesn't necessarily mean mental clarity. It can mean mental clarity. It can also just mean reasonable or normal. It's actually reasonable for Cassian to want to get out of this life of the rebellion.
I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. I've done what I can. And I've done a lot.
It's also reasonable for Cassian to say that he's done a lot. No one is going to, judge him for retiring now. And what Cassian has before him is more than just a partner. Bix has bled and has fought alongside Cassian. She believes in the same causes and shares the same values. This is a relationship that will soar over whatever hardships or tribulations that normal married life will throw at them. They've survived the Empire. They've survived the darkness of one of the most evil regimes in the galaxy together.
We'll leave before it gets too complicated. We'll find some place quiet. There's still places to go to.
This is usually where the hero's journey ends, right? He's gone through all of his trials and tribulations, and it's changed him as a person. Cassian has grown and understands what's important in life. But no, this is Andor. You do not get the best ending. Because again, we're not just after a story, a fantasy tale, a science fiction tale. Tony Gilroy is always after the truth. In Andor, you don't get a hero's end. You just get a bunch of crazy, desperate people with noble intentions. Like Bix, who is now pregnant. Her body is coursing with hormones. She's probably feeling aches and pains as things change in all different places. The same thing for her to do would be to hold on to this honorable man, Captain Andor. Not only is he striking to look at, he can handle almost any situation these two get into. It was Cassian who rescued Bix on Ferrix, and then it was Cassian who rescued her again on Mineral. Sure, he struggles with, getting groceries and is slightly paranoid in public. Maybe he has a few night horrors, but so does Bix, right? They're really meant to be together. But no, instead of embracing this man who has just decided to quit fighting for the galaxy and focus on her instead, she decides to listen to a Force healer who might or might not have labeled him the Chosen One, which only confirms something that Bix has long believed about Andor. Magic or not, destined in the Force or not, Cassian is a stand-up guy. And when someone needs help, Cassian is always there. And in a galaxy that is suffering this much and needs as many heroes as it can be, Bix decides not to be selfish. She decides to be unreasonable, in my opinion. She just gives Cassian away for the rebellion. It's a huge sacrifice. Somewhere sandwiched in between each line of dialogue and in between each cut is another major theme that we probably need to discuss about Andor, the struggle between free will and determination. In many ways, Cassian is just like Anakin, destined for horror and tragedy. The funny thing is we don't need the Force healer to tell us about this. We already have seen what awaits Cassian. And so what makes him such a deeply inspiring character is that despite knowing his destiny, knowing where all of this will go, Andor uses his free will not to run away from his path, but towards it. And with that last shot, we understand why the show is named after him. Because he's probably made the greatest sacrifice of them all. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy,